You will hand over the new house to my parents, or else we're done, Angie? Tom's words hit me like a ton of bricks. Standing in our small rented house, I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The previous night of restless sleep and crying twins made me rub my tired eyes. You think you can bully me into submission? Think again. I snapped, voice shaking with anger as I held Sophie in one arm and steadied Ethan in his high chair. I'm trying to save this family from your selfishness, Tom said, stepping closer, his face flushed. The tension was thick. I remembered the day Sarah, my sister, died in that car crash, leaving her 2 babies to me. And now, raising them with Tom was turning into a nightmare. I looked at him, the younger man I once adored, now a stranger demanding impossible sacrifices. Selfishness? I work every day to make sure these babies have a home and a future, I retorted, my heart pounding in my chest. Tom sneered. And yet you think buying that new house was a good idea, all while we're stuck in this dump. The twins whimpered, sensing the hostility. I softened, trying to mask my despair for their sake. Because it was supposed to be our way out, Tom, for Sophie and Ethan to provide them space to grow, not for your parents. He crossed his arms. They helped us with the down payment. That house wouldn't even exist if it weren't for them. I exhaled deeply, trying to connect to some sense of calm. This was a man who had once held me tenderly, who had promised to be a father to my sister's children. You know that's not true, I said, leveling my gaze. I sold my car and worked overtime for that money. Your parents just tagged along. There was a brief silence, broken only by Ethan babbling. It took me back to nights where Sarah and I shared our dreams, the sisterly bond now replaced by this insidious daily strife. Tom glanced at the clock, irritation creasing his brow. I'm late for work. We'll talk about this later. As he grabbed his coat and stomped out, slamming the door behind him, I sank into a chair, holding Sophie close. The sudden tragedy that brought these twins under my wing had stripped life of its former simplicity. Sarah's laughter, her plans for the future with her kids now seemed like distant echoes. Mama, mama, little Sophie mumbled, tugging at my shirt. I forced a smile. Yes, sweetheart, I'm here. It was hard to mask the brewing storm inside. The day Tom and I met, he was a breath of fresh air, a promise of support in raising Sarah's twins. But now, his demands and his parents' overbearing nature threatened the fragile life we were building. Briefly, I thought back to Sarah, her vibrant energy and unyielding spirit. She wouldn't have let anyone overshadow her dreams. I could almost hear her encouraging me to stay strong. But confronting Tom meant facing a war on multiple fronts, his domineering parents, and perhaps the love that was supposed to bind us. I sighed, cradling Ethan, who was dozing off. We'll figure this out, my loves, I whispered to the twins. I won't let anyone take away what belongs to us. As I started preparing breakfast, chopping vegetables with determined strokes, I knew this battle was far from over. Tom's words echoed in my mind, but they fueled a fire within me. For Sophie and Ethan, I had to stand my ground, no matter the cost. Tom's footsteps echoed outside as I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. I tried to push our argument away, focusing on the day ahead. Raising twins in this cramped space was a daily challenge, but I kept my hope alive with the thought of our new house. The door creaked open, and Tom's parents, Helen and Richard, walked in unannounced. Helen's eyes scanned the living room judgmentally as she set her purse down. Why waste time keeping this place tidy, Angela? She asked, her tone sweet but condescending. I forced a smile. Good morning, Helen. Richard, can I help you with something? Helen ignored my question and picked up Ethan, who was playing with a toy on the floor. You can't handle this alone, Angie. You need help, real help. Richard nodded in agreement, his face stern. Tom said you're still against moving into our house. Because we need our own space, I replied, trying to keep my tone civil. It's important for Sophie and Ethan to have stability. Helen scoffed. Stability? In this dump? We have a large house with plenty of space. Plus, we know how to raise children. Isn't that right, Richard? Absolutely, Richard said. Plus, this isn't about you. It's about the children needing a proper home. I sighed, holding Sophie close. I appreciate your offer, but we need to make our own decisions. This situation is temporary. We'll move into the new house once it's ready. Helen's smile vanished. That house should be ours. You're being stubborn and selfish, Angela. The insult stung, but I held my ground. I will do what's best for Sophie and Ethan. If Tom thinks your house is better, that's something we need to discuss. Helen's face hardened. Discuss it with Tom? You mean let him order you around? Follow his lead or risk your family falling apart? Is that what you want? I want what's best for the twins, I replied, feeling my voice waver slightly. We need to maintain our family unit, not break it apart under pressure. Helen and Richard exchanged glances. They weren't used to resistance. We'll see about that, Richard murmured as they gathered their things and marched out. The door closed, leaving a heavy silence. Later that evening, Tom sat at the kitchen table, looking more worn out than usual. I placed a plate of reheated lasagna in front of him. We ate in silence until I finally spoke. Your parents came by this morning. They want us to move in with them again. Tom put down his fork and sighed. It would solve a lot of our problems, Angie. We can't keep living like this. Moving in with them will create more problems, I said firmly. We need to focus on creating a stable environment for our children in our new house. I won't let your parents dictate our lives. Tom's eyes darkened with frustration. You don't understand. This isn't just about you. It's about making sacrifices for family. I have made sacrifices, I snapped. You think I took this all on for myself? I lost my sister. I'm raising her kids. I won't lose myself to your parents' control. He stood up abruptly, glaring at me. Then you're the one tearing this family apart. Your stubbornness will be our downfall. Fighting back tears, I took Sophie and Ethan to their room, leaving him alone with his anger. As I rocked the twins to sleep, I knew I had to stay strong. This was our fight, not just mine. For their sake, I had to make sure we built a future on our terms, not dictated by Tom's parents. Moving into Tom's parents' house felt like stepping into an unending nightmare. Boxes still unpacked, I carried Sophie into the living room, following Helen's terse instructions. Put her down there, Angie, Helen ordered, pointing to a spot on the rug. My way's better for the children, you'll see. I nodded, masking my reluctance. Richard barged in, a cigarette dangling from his lips. The sharp smell made me wince. Could we keep the smoking outside, please? It's harmful for the babies, I asked, trying to sound polite but firm. Richard glared at me. My house, my rules. Get used to it or get out. Helpless anger welled up inside me, but I stayed silent. I couldn't risk escalating things further. Instead, I stepped outside to catch my breath, looking out into the vast, manicured lawn that now felt more like a prison yard. Tom found me there, phone in hand, scrolling through messages. He looked up briefly. Everything okay? No, Tom? It's not okay, I replied, keeping my voice low. Your dad's smoking inside. It's bad for the kids. He shrugged, barely meeting my eyes. You know how he is. Just let it go. Let it go? These are our children, Tom, I shouted, unable to contain my frustration. He sighed. You need to adapt, Angie. They're offering us a home and support. Stop making everything so difficult. Stop making it. I stopped myself, took a deep breath, and just walked away. Inside, Helen had taken over the kitchen, barking orders at me while cooking a complicated dinner. Chop those vegetables. Faster, Angie. I bit my tongue and focused on the carrots, feeling her eyes bore into me. Sophie and Ethan, seated in high chairs, seemed more fussy than usual, probably picking up on the turmoil around them. After dinner, Helen cornered me in the hallway. You need to understand that you're under our roof now. You better pull your weight. Do you think I'm not contributing? I asked, trying to keep the venom out of my voice. Raising 2 children, maintaining a job as a graphic designer, that's not enough? Helen's face twisted in anger. You're disrespectful and ungrateful. Tom deserves better. As she walked away, my hands trembled from restrained rage. There were no allies here, no sanctuary. I was a prisoner behind every smiling face and condescending remark. That night, I found Tom in our room, lying on the bed with his eyes closed. We need to talk, I said, shutting the door behind me. He sat up slowly. About what now? This situation. It's intolerable, I said, voice cracking. Your parents overstep every boundary. We need to leave. Tom frowned. Leave? To where? You know we can't afford another place right now. We have the new house, I reminded him, heart pounding. He shook his head. Not without my parents' help, and you're the one who drove them away. My patience snapped. No, Tom. You've allowed this to happen. You've let them control every aspect of our lives. This isn't what we signed up for. He stood, towering over me. Maybe you're not cut out for this family, Angie. A tear escaped my eye, but I wiped it away quickly. I guess we'll see about that. The following days were a blur of tension and unease. Helen's constant criticisms, Richard's smoking, Tom's indifference, it all built up like pressure in a boiling pot. I knew I couldn't allow this toxic environment to poison Sophie and Ethan's upbringing. Every moment in this house strengthened my resolve. I had to find a way to break free, no matter the cost. Every day felt like a test of endurance. Juggling house chores dictated by Helen, dealing with Richard's constant indoor smoking, and facing Tom's growing apathy drained every bit of strength. My desire to fight back strengthened as the days dragged on. One evening, after a particularly rough day at work, I noticed the familiar scent of cigarette smoke as soon as I walked in. Richard was in his usual chair, puffing away like a king on his throne. Unable to take it anymore, I approached him. "Richard, your smoking is harming the kids," I said, trying to stay calm. "Please, no smoking inside." Richard's eyes narrowed as he blew out a cloud of smoke. "This is my house, Angela. You don't like it, leave." I clenched my fists, anger bubbling up, but I held back, knowing a direct confrontation wouldn't help. Later that night, Tom walked in, looking more exhausted than usual. "We need to talk," I began, voice low but firm. He placed his briefcase on the table. "Go ahead." "This can't go on. Your parents control everything, and it's hurting Sophie, Ethan, and me," I said, barely keeping my frustration in check. Tom sighed, rubbing his temples. "You always make it sound so dramatic, Angie. They're just trying to help." "Help by suffocating any sense of independence we have? By disregarding our children's health?" My voice rose despite my attempts to stay calm. Tom stood up straight, eyes cold. "You're overreacting again. Maybe you just can't handle being part of a real family." "Is this what you call a real family? Because it feels like a prison," I retorted, my voice breaking. He stared at me, a mixture of frustration and disappointment. "If you can't accept how things are, maybe you should leave." I couldn't believe my ears. Forcing me out instead of standing up for us? For our kids? Tom's silence was all the answer I needed. Realizing I had to take control, I turned and walked out of the room, my heart heavy but my resolve hardening. The next few days were filled with increasing tension. Helen's micromanagement, Richard's smoking, and Tom's indifference became unbearable. One evening, after Helen criticized the way I bathed Sophie, I reached my breaking point. Tom was in the living room, scrolling through his phone. I marched over. "You're letting your parents run our lives. This isn't what I signed up for," I yelled, feeling my control slip. Tom looked up, clearly annoyed. "Maybe you're not cut out for this family, Angie." For a moment, all I could do was stare at him, stunned. "You're right," I whispered finally. "I need to be somewhere I can be strong for Sophie and Ethan, and this isn't it." Packing a few bags quickly, I took the twins and headed for the door. Helen and Richard watched, whispering and smirking as I passed. Tom didn't even try to stop me. Back in our old rented house, I sat in the empty living room, feeling a mixture of despair and relief. I was breaking free from the suffocating grip of Tom's family. It was time to reclaim my life and protect my children from the toxic influences that almost tore us apart. Tomorrow, I would file for divorce. As I tucked Sophie and Ethan into their cribs, I kissed their foreheads softly. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. "Mama's going to make sure of it." With a deep breath, I looked around the empty room. It felt like home again. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were starting over. And this time, no one would take that from us. The next morning, the quiet of the empty house was almost unbearable. Sophie and Ethan were asleep, allowing me a rare moment of peace. Sitting at the kitchen table, I dialed Tom's number, bracing myself for the inevitable showdown. "Angie," he answered, his voice thick with annoyance. "Tom, you need to know," I started, my voice shaking. "I'm filing for divorce, and I want the house back." There was a bitter laugh on the other end, one that didn't surprise me. "Good luck with that, Angie. I already sold the house. It's gone." His words felt like a punch to the gut. "What did you do?" I whispered, stunned. "I used the money for us," he said flatly, as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "For our family, Angie. Too bad you can't see it." Rage swept over me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You had no right. Return that money now." "It's too late," Tom replied coldly. "You walked away. This is the consequence." I hung up, my hands trembling. Filing for divorce wasn't just an option anymore. It was a necessity. Later that day, I met with Mike, my lawyer, in his downtown office. He was a tall man with a commanding presence, someone you wanted on your side. He listened intently as I outlined everything. "You have a strong case, Angie," he said, jotting down notes. "Start by documenting everything. We'll also file for an emergency hearing to get the house situation sorted." "Thank you, Mike," I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. Back in my car, I took a deep breath. There was no time to waste. I called Tom's parents, knowing it would be another battle. Helen picked up, her voice immediately grating on my nerves. "Helen, I need to talk to Tom. He sold the house and I need to know where the money is." "He did what's best for the family, Angela," she snapped. "Stop being ungrateful and accept reality." "My reality is ensuring my children have what they need," I said firmly. "Tell Tom this isn't over." I hung up before she could respond. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and legal meetings, each step making the fight for my children and our future more real. Mike worked tirelessly, and slowly, progress was made. One evening, as I tried to unwind with a cup of tea, my phone rang. It was Tom. "You've destroyed any chance at reconciliation," he spat. "Why do you hate me so much?" "I don't hate you," I responded, keeping my voice steady. "I do hate what you've become. This is about the twins. They deserve stability and safety." "You're making a mistake," he growled. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I said softly, "but not as much as if I stayed." After hanging up, I felt an odd sense of relief. This war had many fronts, but I was prepared to fight every one of them. No one would take away what we deserved, not Tom, nor his parents. As I tucked Sophie and Ethan into bed that night, I kissed their little foreheads and whispered, "We're going to make it, I promise." Watching them sleep peacefully, I knew this path was the right one. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. For the sake of my children, I'd stop at nothing. My days became a whirlwind of legal documents and court proceedings. Mike was a constant presence, offering advice and support as we battled for custody and the return of the house money. One afternoon, Mike called with news. "Angie, we've got the hearing scheduled. Be prepared for a tough fight, but we have strong evidence." "Thanks, Mike. I'll be ready," I said, feeling the weight of everything suddenly pressing down on me. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, I poured my heart into writing a graphic memoir about my ordeal. Using my skills as a graphic designer, I crafted detailed illustrations and poignant stories that captured the manipulation and abuse I had endured from Tom and his parents. It was therapeutic, turning my pain into purpose. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was daunting, but I held my head high, clutching a folder of documents that detailed every instance of Tom's neglect and his parents' overreach. Tom and his parents sat on one side, glaring at me with cold eyes. Helen's smug expression almost broke my resolve, but I stayed focused. Mike stood next to me, a pillar of assurance. The judge listened as Mike presented our case, laying out the evidence systematically. Emails, text messages, financial records, everything was there, painting a clear picture of Tom's betrayal and his parents' tyranny. When it was Tom's turn, his lawyer tried to twist the narrative, painting me as unstable and uncooperative. Helen even testified, her voice dripping with false sincerity as she talked about how much they tried to help me. Help? By undermining every decision I made for my children? I couldn't keep quiet any longer. The judge allowed me to speak, and I detailed the constant invasions, the harassment, the lack of support. Tom stood up, his face reddening with anger. "Nothing I did was ever good enough for you, Angie. You pushed me to this." "You chose this path, Tom," I replied calmly. "You chose to betray the trust we had, the family we tried to build." The judge called for a recess, and I stepped outside for some air. Mike joined me, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You're doing great. Stick to the facts, and we'll get through this." Back in the courtroom, the judge reviewed all the evidence and testimonies. Finally, she delivered her decision. Tom had to return part of the money from the house sale, and I was granted primary custody of Sophie and Ethan. Tom's face twisted with rage. "You've destroyed any chance at reconciliation. Why do you hate me?" Facing him, I took a deep breath. "I don't hate you, Tom. I hate the man you became. It's time you faced the consequences." His parents looked furious, but I felt a sense of relief wash over me. This battle was over, but the war wasn't. Outside the courtroom, Mike gave me a firm handshake. "You did it, Angie," he said, smiling. "It's not just me, it's for Sophie and Ethan too," I replied. Returning home that evening, I felt lighter, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I picked up my graphic memoir and contacted a few colleagues in the publishing industry. My story needed to be told, not just for me, but for anyone who found themselves trapped in a similar situation. In the following weeks, word spread about my memoir. Calls and emails poured in, and soon, I had a meeting scheduled with a prominent publisher. As I prepared to share my story with the world, I knew this was just the beginning of reclaiming my strength and independence. I looked at Sophie and Ethan, laughing in their playroom. "We're going to be okay," I whispered, the future looking a little brighter every day. A week after the court ruling, Tom called and asked to meet me at a local park. Reluctantly, I agreed, leaving Sophie and Ethan with my neighbor. The park was quiet, with only the sound of children playing in the distance. Tom was already there, pacing restlessly under a large oak tree. He didn't waste time. "We need to talk, Angie." "I'm listening," I replied, crossing my arms defensively. "Look, Angie," he started, running a hand through his hair. "Can't we find a way to make this work, for the sake of the twins?" "Make what work, Tom? You've already sold the house and betrayed my trust. This isn't about us anymore. It's about doing what's best for Sophie and Ethan," I said, my voice steady. He sighed, a mix of frustration and desperation in his eyes. "I know I messed up, okay? But I can't lose them. We need to come to some agreement." I shook my head, feeling the old pang of pain mixed with the strength I had gained. "You should have thought about that before siding with your parents against us." Tom took a step closer, his voice softening. "I'm sorry, Angie. Please, let's fix this." I stood firm. "Words aren't enough, Tom. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." The desperation in his eyes turned to anger. "Even if that means tearing this family apart, you're really going to do this?" "I'm doing this for the twins, and for myself," I said firmly. "I won't live in a toxic environment because of your decisions." Tom's shoulders slumped. "You can't mean this. Think of the twins." "I am thinking of them. That's why I'm ending this now," I said, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. Realizing there was no changing my mind, Tom nodded slowly. "Okay, Angie, you win." It didn't feel like winning. It felt necessary. Watching him walk away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This chapter of my life was closing, but it was necessary for the well-being of my children and myself. Back at home, I finalized the divorce papers, feeling a sense of closure with each signature. The following weeks flew by in a blur of legalities and preparing for our new life. I found a cozy house in a supportive community, a place where we could truly start fresh. The moving day came quickly. As I unpacked boxes in our new home, Sophie and Ethan played in the garden, their laughter echoing through the warm afternoon air. This was a place of peace, a stark contrast to the oppressive environment we had left behind. One evening, as I watched the twins sleep in their new room, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and resolve. My memoir was gaining attention, leading to public appearances and a resurgence in my career. Standing on stage at a book launch event, I shared my story openly. "This is for anyone who's ever felt trapped, who thinks they can't find a way out," I said, my voice clear and strong. "You can break free. You can rebuild." After my speech, an audience member approached me. "Your story is inspiring. Thank you for sharing it." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched. "It means a lot." Returning home from the event, I found Sophie and Ethan waiting for me. Their bright smiles were the reminder of why I had fought so hard. I knelt down, hugging them tightly. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. "This is our forever home, where we're safe and loved." Looking out at the twins playing in the garden, I smiled. The journey was hard, but we had emerged stronger. The future was bright, and together we would build a life filled with love, respect, and resilience. Life had a new rhythm. Waking up to the sound of Sophie and Ethan giggling, working on my graphic designs, and enjoying the safety of our new home. The air was lighter, filled with possibilities rather than dread. My memoir was officially published, and the response was overwhelming. Emails from other survivors of toxic relationships poured in, offering gratitude and sharing their stories. It was empowering, not just for me, but for everyone who felt seen and heard. One sunny afternoon as I was preparing lunch, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Helen standing there, her face a mask of thinly veiled contempt. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I need to talk to you, Angela," she said, pushing her way inside without waiting for an invitation. Watching Sophie and Ethan playing nearby, I motioned for them to go to their room. "What is it?" "Tom's falling apart," she started, eyes narrowing. "He's lost his job, and it's because of you. You've ruined everything." "I've ruined everything?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It was his choices that led to this. I'm finally rebuilding my life, and I'm not going back. She took a deep breath, trying to regain composure. "You need to speak to him. He wants to see the kids. No, not until he proves that he's changed and that he respects the boundaries set by the court." "You're a selfish woman, Angela," Helen hissed. "You always have been. You think you're better than us?" "It's not about being better. It's about protecting my children," I replied, feeling the anger simmer just below the surface. As she left, slamming the door behind her, I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the encounter. My phone buzzed with a message from Mike, "Meeting with publisher next week. They're excited." A smile crept across my face. Despite Helen's venom, life was slowly piecing itself back together. The following week, I walked into the publisher's office, a sleek downtown building buzzing with creativity. The meeting went exceptionally well, and they offered me a contract for my next book. My story wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning. Returning home, I found Sophie and Ethan waiting for me at the door, their faces lighting up with joy. "Mommy's home." I scooped them up, their joy infectious. "Yes, I'm home. And guess what? We're going to celebrate tonight." We had a small party in the living room, just the three of us, eating pizza and dancing to silly tunes. It felt perfect. Simple, happy, full of love. Before tucking the twins into bed, I sat down with them. "You know, everything I do it for you too. To keep you safe and happy." "Love you, Mama," Sophie murmured, her eyes heavy with sleep. Ethan gave a sleepy nod. "I love you both so much," I whispered, kissing their foreheads. Sitting on the porch later, the cool night air wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. Tom and his parents had tried to break us, but in doing so, they had only made us stronger. The journey had been rough, but every step led us here, to a place where we could breathe, dream, and live freely. I looked out at the darkening sky, feeling a profound sense of peace. Our story was far from over. It was just beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to every chapter. Together, Sophie, Ethan, and I would write our own story, filled with love, resilience, and the unshakable belief in our right to live life on our terms.